Chapter 8 Introductions. The following Sunday, James, Kyle, Lauren and Zara drove to Cambridgeshire to meet Ryan Quinn. He'd kept his nose clean for 3.5 years, earning himself the right to spend the last 4 months of his sentence in a minimum security prison. It was a sunny afternoon as Zara drove up to a striped barrier in a small BMW. She waved visiting papers out of her window at a tubby prison officer stepping out of his kiosk. "Shan't be seeing you again," he said to Zara as he gave the papers a cursory glance. "Mr. Quinn's heading out next week, isn't he?" "I certainly hope so," Zara nodded. "We're supposed to be getting married." "Oh, well done." The guard smiled. "Whose are all the kids?" "All mine." The guard held his gut and boomed with laughter as he squinted through the back window at Lauren and James. "Oh, a few weeks living with that lot, and he'll probably be begging us to let him back in here." Lauren smiled at the guard, but her expression changed once Zara had driven them through the gate and out of the guard's earshot. "There he goes," she said caustically. "The funniest man in the world." Kyle burst out laughing. "Who rattled your cage?" "I can't stand men who talk down at you like you're a 5-year-old, Lauren tutted. They cruised over speed bumps towards the car park, passing flower beds and a couple of bare-chested inmates pushing fly-mows over the grass. "Call this a prison?" James carped as he stepped out of the car and studied the lines of magnolia-painted dormitories where the inmates slept. "Looks more like a holiday camp to me." Zara led the way past the lines of cars towards the visiting block. It was a single-story building, and the mixture of plastic stacking chairs and prisoners' artwork on the walls reminded James of the classrooms at his old primary school. Because it was a nice day, most inmates had taken their visitors outdoors to sit in the sun. The only company for the lonely-looking attendant was a couple snogging madly in a dim corner. Ryan Quinn had been allocated one of the private rooms where inmates met their solicitors. Zara led the kids in and grabbed a seat at the table. There were only 3 chairs, so James and Kyle leant against the wall. James thought Quinn looked more like a drama teacher or someone who worked for the council than a criminal. He wore naff-looking plastic sandals, drainpipe jeans, and a stone-washed rugby shirt that came straight out of the 1980s. He was the type who must have been skinny in his prime, but middle age had granted him a gut and great tufts of hair that bristled out of each nostril when he exhaled. "So this is the government's secret weapon," Ryan said, smiling wryly at the kids as he spoke in his heavy Belfast accent. "The most outrageous example of state fascism I've ever encountered, all logoed up for the benefit of Nike, Metallica, and Arsenal Football Club." "Nice to meet you too," Kyle said, leaning forward to shake Ryan's hand. "That was very cutting. I do what I can to keep the multinationals grinding the jackboot of oppression down on the developing world, though I've actually got a bit of a sideline as a gay liberal." Quinn was surprised by Kyle's knowing response, and his startled expression made Zara laugh. "One of the reasons cherubs do so well, Ryan, is that people like you underestimate them," she grinned. "Kyle plans to study law at Cambridge when he leaves Cherub. James just aced his maths A-level 4 years early, after studying for less than 10 months. Lauren is a second Dan karate black belt. She's practically fluent in Russian and Spanish, and last year, she almost killed a man 4 times her size with a hotel biro. All 3 have received advanced espionage training, and their capabilities are in line with adult special forces." "Or a Zebra 84 training camp," Kyle smirked. Ryan cracked up laughing. "Ah, you've done your research, young Kyle." Maybe when you're too old for Cherub, you can come over and work for the good guys. James nodded. Yeah, you've got a lot in common with each other. I mean, vegetarians and homosexuals. It's all the same kind of thing, isn't it? James only opened his mouth to prove he was paying attention, but regretted it as soon as he saw everyone turn and scowl at him. James, why don't you go dig a great big hole and jump in it? Kyle asked. I was just... Jesus, Kyle, there's no need to get all touchy. Kyle tutted. Here's a tip, James. From now on, have a go at using your brain before you open your mouth. Cool it, you two, Zara interrupted stiffly, as she burrowed into her handbag and pulled out a purse. I'm sure our young ambassador for political correctness didn't actually mean it. James, there's some vending machines out in the hallway. Take my change and sort out what everyone wants to eat and drink. There was a queue at the machine that dispensed depressingly small cups of instant coffee, so it was nearly 10 minutes before James came back and plonked a tray of drinks, crisps, and Jaffa cakes on the table. Meantime, Kyle had been out into the hallway and grabbed a couple of extra chairs. As James sat down, Lauren opened up a packet of crisps, but as she dipped her hand in, Ryan snatched the bag out of her hand and began reading from the label. Tyler's thick sliced tasty chicken flavor. Ingredients: potatoes, vegetable oil, chicken stock powder, monosodium glutamate, color, salt. Ryan leaned across the table and stared intensely at Lauren. Have you ever seen the inside of a chicken farm? Lauren shook her head. The birds are stacked in mesh cages, 8 or 10 levels high, with 10 or 12 birds crammed into each tiny cage. Chickens get extremely frustrated being huddled together like that, so the farmers cut their beaks off as soon as they're born to stop them pecking at each other. Unfortunately, the beak isn't dead tissue like a horse's hoof. It contains hundreds of thousands of nerve endings, and it feels about as painful as having your nose chopped off without being given any anesthetic. After 6 weeks crammed inside mesh cages without ever standing on a blade of grass or seeing a glimmer of sunlight, the birds are ready for slaughter. This whole time they've been crapping through the mesh down onto the birds below them. Right at the bottom, the sticky white chicken shit is so deep that some birds' feet are torn out of their sockets as they're pulled out of it for the ride to the slaughterhouse. Once they arrive, the chickens are hooked upside down onto a conveyor belt. A rotating blade is supposed to slit the chicken's throat, but chickens have a tendency to wriggle, and the knife misses every 7th or 8th bird. Now, you might think that not getting your throat cut is a lucky break, but it's not. Because all the dangling, bloody chickens keep rolling along until they're lowered down into a tank of boiling water to loosen off their feathers. And instead of having its throat cut, the poor bird gets boiled alive. Ryan pushed the tasty chicken crisps back across the table towards Lauren. Tuck in, he grinned. Lauren stared into the packet the way she might have stared if she'd found a bloody axe in her lap. Well, she said uncertainly, I'm in here because I believe that exploiting animals is wrong, Ryan continued forcefully. I'll probably catch a long sentence sometime and end up dying in prison. I'll never own a car or have a nice house. I'll never have kids, and I doubt there'll be anyone at my funeral besides the priest and the undertaker. But if I've made a few girls like you think about what they put in their mouths and persuade them to stop eating meat and wearing bits of dead animals on their feet, maybe it will have been worth it, eh? James saw that Lauren had been spooked by the lanky Irishman, and it riled up his instinct to defend his little sister. Cut it out, eh? She's only 11. Lauren shot a don't patronize me glance at her brother, then looked up at Ryan and smiled respectfully at him. It's really cool that you fight for stuff you believe in so strongly. I know it's kind of gross eating animals. We can't eat meat on the mission anyway, so I'll stop now and see how it goes. Ryan smiled triumphantly. And maybe you'll not be in any hurry to start again when your mission's over. Lauren shrugged. Maybe. There's tons of veggie girls on campus, actually. Zara cleared her throat. Anyhow, Ryan, she interrupted, you'll have plenty of time to indoctrinate this lot over the coming weeks. Right now, we desperately need to discuss details. Names, dates, faces, and pickup times. You're out of here in less than a week, and there's a lot of things to be done to get our little show on the road. James reached in front of Zara and grabbed Lauren's crisps. Seeing as you're not eating them. Zara swatted James's arm with the back of her hand. Unfortunately, one of her rings wrapped painfully against his knuckles. Oh, bloody hell! James howled. Lauren giggled. Serves you right. I didn't mean to hurt you, James, Zara said brusquely. But can't you at least try showing a little sensitivity towards other people's feelings?